So is this the reality of the SDA church, or Ty Gibson is making all this stuff up? Because the whole point of his video is that the Seventh-day Adventist church is in theological emergency, is in missional emergency, and also evangelistic emergency. Is this really true of the SDA church? Friends, let us listen to Ty Gibson on his recent video, and after that, we'll have a thought to share with you.
We have an emergency on our hands, a missional emergency and an evangelistic emergency. I would even say, even at a deeper level, a theological emergency. We're in trouble as a denomination. Now, if you're gallivanting along as a preacher, as a pastor, as an evangelist, as some kind of conference head honcho, and you're just kind of, going along through life like, everything's groovy, everything's fine, we're killing it. We're amazing. We're the remnant church, man. And we got this. Well, you and I, we need to process some information. So I want to begin with a premise from Max Dupre. Max Dupre was a leadership guru for corporate America. And he woke up one day and put those glasses on purpose. Amen. And then he said, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something. And here's what he said. He said, the first job of the leader is to define reality. I mean, this is self-evident, isn't it? Leaders can't be liars. Leaders have to face the music. Leaders have to confront reality. This is the first job of the leader, and everybody in this room is a leader. If you're a preacher, if you're a pastor, if you're an evangelist, if you're a conference employee, you're a leader. Now, I would go a step further and say that every human being is, by definition, a leader over whatever sphere of influence you happen to have. But this is a pastor's conference. This is a preacher's conference, and we have a responsibility to define reality in our context as Seventh-day Adventist pastors, evangelists, preachers, leaders. We have a responsibility to tell ourselves the truth. So I hope you're not, weak in the knees right now. I hope you got some sleep, because we're going to have to tell ourselves some brutal things right now in order to just survive against our own extinction, because that's where we're headed as a denomination. So in the first message I gave this morning, I kind of put my hand on our shoulder, our corporate collective shoulder, and gave a gentle squeeze and a little bit of a caress. And now I'm going to drive my right fist into your guts. And I promise that before we're done, I'll loop back, give you a chance to catch your breath. You will survive this. You will survive this. You're going to be okay. But our first job as leaders is to define reality. So what is reality in our context? Well, the median age of a Seventh-day Adventist right now in North America is 51 years old. And we're aging as a denomination. Every year that goes by, the median age goes up. Also, on any given Sabbath in North America, church attendance is defined by approximately 4% young adult attendance. 4%. Only 4%. By the way, all the data I'm sharing with you at this juncture is from the General Conference website. The guy with the long hair, pleasant fellow with the English accent, what's his name? Yeah, the guy who did all that research, David Trem. So all of this is on the GC website. So 4% of attendees on any given Sabbath are young adults. They're essentially gone. They're missing. And here's why, because the next number is very fascinating. It's a large spread, but necessarily so. We lose between 50 and 70% of everyone we baptize. Even those that we have as a captive audience that go through our educational system. Right? Only 3 or 4 out of 10 who are educated through the Seventh-day Adventist educational system remain Seventh-day Adventists. Only 1 out of 10 who don't go through our schools. So our schools are important to the general configuration. I mean, if it wasn't for our schools, we are only keeping 1 out of 10 young adults. Essentially, people grow up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and leave. That's our reality. I have a friend named Pastor Chad Stewart who pastors at the Spencerville Seventh-day Adventist Church near the General Conference. And he stood up one Sabbath in order to make the point, and he introduced a large choir of 46 young people who were about to sing a song. And he said, by the time these 46 young people composing this choir that was about to sing the special music, get the feeling, Sabbath morning, we're going to have a special music. Look at all those young people up there. They're adorable. And they're about to sing a song. And he has 32 of them will no longer be Seventh-day Adventists by the time they're done with college. Enjoy the song. Then he sat down. And he sat down. So this is reality for us, you know. This is reality for us as a people. We say we have 22 million members worldwide. This is the number that we speak and applaud ourselves with. Now, I just want to say something about this number. First of all, were you at the General Conference session recently? We like this number. We dig this number. This is our number. We're so happy with this number. Let me just tell you the truth. This number sucks. This number is not a good number. It's just as high as we could fudge the numbers in order to make ourselves feel good. So it's the highest number we can speak, and then we speak it with pride, right? There are 22 million Seventh-day Adventists. We're the fastest growing Protestant denomination in the world. In parentheses, let me point out that all evangelical Protestant churches are in the throes of death in Western civilization. All of them. We're not unique in this regard, although we have our unique version. I had a sign in my garage for years that I found at a junk store. I don't know what happened to it. We moved and I lost it. It said, "I am my own version of the universal confusion." So we should never think that, you know, Adventists are particularly problematic on planet Earth. You know, when people say, the Baptists, ... the Adventists, ... and, you know, file a complaint. The fact is we're humans. So we're just our own version of the universal confusion. Our particular version of the universal confusion is a little weird in our own Adventist way of being weird, the same way the problems in every other group of humans is weird in their own kind of way. We are humans, and so the problem is really a human problem, but we have our own Adventist version of the problem, and that's what I want to explore with you because it needs to be addressed. The fact is, if there are 22 million Seventh-day Adventists worldwide, this is an abysmal number with 8 billion plus humans on the planet. Most people on planet Earth have never heard of us. We don't figure into anybody's equations. Nobody is asking our opinion about anything. When conversations are had on the stage of the, you know, world politics and economics and art, we don't figure in. Nobody's curious about what we think because most people don't even know that we exist as a denomination. So 22 million is not a large number. It's not. Elon Musk has more followers than the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The fact is, we are not a significant force to be reckoned with. Now, hold that in your mind for a moment. Hold that in your mind for a moment, parallel to the claims that we make. That we're about to give the loud cry. The whole earth is about to be lightened with the glory of what we have to say. And it's going to be global, and everybody's going to encounter what Adventists have to say. I don't know. So here's the thing. That David Trim guy, I got on the phone with him about a year ago, and I said, hey, so I want to read everything you have on this website, but it's a lot. Could you just tell me the truth of the situation? Okay, so we say 22 million. Is that how many we had? He said, nah. He said, back at that time, he said, we have about 6 million worldwide. Because not only do we write down everybody's name that we baptize in mass baptisms around the world, so that's the number that we're giving, right? But we also keep attendance. We have this thing that local churches do where like once a quarter or we count all the people present. Okay, so he says, actually there's about 6 million, and then recently I talked with him, and he said, I think maybe attendance has been rising a little bit, and so let's say 10 million. So we say there's 22 million of us. Really, there's only about 6 to 10 million Seventh-day Adventists that are present and accounted for. And then when you have the 6 to 10 million, that simply means those are the ones that are showing up. Now, if you're a pastor, you know that, if you count all those showing up, if you have a congregation of 50 or 100 or 500 or 5,000, whatever it is, you know that of those who are actually showing up, what's the percentage of them that are actually engaged? A lot of them are just showing up out of a sense of, it's what you do. It's my culture. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. My grandmother would freak out if I wasn't going to church, so I go. Right? There's a lot of people who are just in it because it's my tribe. It's cultural. I just go because that's what I do. And if I'm single, there might be some hot chick there. So I need to go. I need to go to church. These are the factors that are involved. So of the 6 to 10 million, you get the picture, right? So our twofold corporate lie as a people runs something like this, like a mantra. We have the truth and we're finishing the work. No, we don't, and no, we're not. No, we don't, and no, we're not. Now, you can parse this with me. You can say, no, Ty, we do have the truth. By which we mean we have a list of doctrines that are provable from Scripture from an apologetic standpoint. And yet Scripture would define the truth much more beautifully and magnificently than that. There is the truth, lowercase t, and there's the truth, uppercase T, and that's Jesus and the entire constellation of realities that emerge from him, and those would be incarnation, life, teachings, death, resurrection, ascension to the right hand of the Father. Let's just call that for shorthand the Christ event. We're not theologically out of line by identifying it singularly as an event. This is what Paul does in Romans chapter 5. He says, by one man's righteous act, singular. Jesus is an event, singular, in history that has occurred. So everything that pertains to him, that emerges from him, is a single act, according to Paul, that redeemed humanity corporately, universally, saved the world. Okay, so to say we have the truth is not an accurate statement if what we mean is we have the verses to prove that Saturday's the right day and Sunday's the wrong day. We have the verses to prove that when you die, you're really dead. We have the truth. The second coming is not a secret rapture, and we can prove it. We have the truth. That doesn't really qualify as having the truth. That qualifies as having some factual data that has potential. It has potential, let's say. It has the potential to contribute to the uppercase truth, that is the revelation of the beauty of God's character in the person of Christ. Okay, let's make no mistake about it. We have been called to communicate the gospel. It's called the Gospel Commission. The Gospel Commission. And this will become more clear. And as far as finishing the work, I mean, we're behind. That's an understatement. We're have some catching up to do, right? Just numerically, this is a problematic. We need to, Seventh-day Adventists, instead of applauding ourselves and saying this kind of stuff to ourselves repeatedly, even though it has a modicum of truth to it, factually in some sense, we need to stop saying this kind of stuff to ourselves, and we need to get on our knees, preferably on our faces before God, and say, we have botched this. Would you please help us to see clearly? Because the fact is that we are committing a slow, protracted suicide as a denomination, and we imagine as a self-preservation technique that it's not a suicide, it's a homicide. We think the world is killing us. We think that, it's all becoming secular and social media, and how can you ever win anybody to Jesus with TikTok? It's all so attractive and alluring. And okay, Jesus is more attractive and more alluring. The problem is we haven't tried him yet. We haven't tried him yet. We haven't actually put forth Christ in all his magnificence to our audience. And if we did, we would find the audience growing necessarily, because people, you remember in the previous message, I said we specialize in persuasion. Arguments toward persuasion. We need to begin specializing in beauty toward attraction. You don't have to, if a beautiful song is playing, you don't have to say to people, listen to it. Listen to this. No, if you hear a beautiful song, people are going, it's spontaneous, it's voluntary, you're leaning in. Nobody has to tell you to do it. If something is delicious on a plate in front of you, you don't need to say, eat it. You just, give me a fork, man. I'm going to eat this thing right now because it's spontaneous. The gospel has to look like that. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is instructive here. She began writing this when she was 18 years old, and it was published when she was 20. Now, we think it's a horror novel. It's kind of horrific, but really she was aiming for something else. She was aiming to communicate a pretty deep sociological truth, and it's this, that human beings tend to create systems that become autonomous on their own, take on a life of their own, and then the humans that created the system lose control of it and spend the rest of the story trying to kill it. Trying to kill the thing that we realize, we shouldn't have created that. Adventism has created and normalized an approach to what we call soul winning or evangelism. We've normalized a system that in our sober moments we know doesn't work, but we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is Einstein's definition of insanity, you'll remember. And Einstein went on to say, didn't he, that no problem can be solved at the same level at which it was created. Right? You can't solve, Adventism cannot solve its current missional crisis by doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? You can't mail out enough books to enough zip codes. You can't put up enough billboards along freeways. You can't actually produce a different effect from the same methodology. We're dealing with a systems failure. Think about it this way. If you have a factory, systems theory says this, that every system is perfectly designed to produce its outcomes. So all you have to do is engineer the thing backwards. If a system is producing something, the machine is designed to produce what you're getting at the end of the conveyor belt. You know, if you don't want Hostess Twinkies, if you don't want cupcakes, if you want a tofu quinoa salad, you can't get a tofu quinoa salad out of a Twinkie machine. You need a different machine. You need a different system to produce a different result. Right? You can't stand at the end of the conveyor belt wishing that you could get yourself a tofu quinoa salad out of a Twinkie machine. The fact is you need to completely re-engineer the system. The whole thing needs to be torn to the ground. You might be able to use some of the parts, right? But you have to reconstruct. Mary Shelley's genius was that she essentially said that human beings can create systems that take on a life of their own and then are producing destructive results, but you can't kill it because it's now a system that in some sense we're dependent on. Now you got 401k plans and retirement packages and health insurance and properties to be maintained, and you got this denominational entity that has in it necessarily, this isn't a criticism of this denomination or any denomination, this is a description of sociological reality. This is human. It's not particularly Adventist. The moment you have a system that must be maintained, there is a self-preserving mechanism that kicks in. And the only way to change the outcomes is with revolution. There has to be revolution. So there are hundreds of Adventist churches just across North America that are in the throes of death because they are conclaves of controversy and strongholds of stubborn cultural irrelevance. And we know this. We know this. I have a conference ministerial director, a union ministerial director who's a friend of mine, who as soon as he was put in the position, he decided, actually I have a conference president friend too, totally different region of the United States. They both did the same thing. I don't know if they shared this idea with one another. So the 20 that remain, they're only remaining not because they're strong spiritually, but because they're culturally cohesive and linguistically cohesive, right? So for a year, he just traveled around taking notes, basically asking questions, interviewing people, sitting through the services, listening. And he said, Ty, what I discovered was startling. I said, well, why are this is just one city, right? Why are the 50 dying? He said, well, here's what I discovered. He said, this one, they're in a controversy over whether the Trinity is a legit doctrine or not. This one, they're in a controversy over whether cheese should be allowed at the potluck. This one, they're in an argument over music styles. This one, they are in a complete knockdown, drag-out fight over caffeinated beverages. This one over here, they're trying to figure out whether the 144,000 is a literal or symbolic number. This one over here, they have a new interpretation, a future application of the 7 trumpets. And this is what they think, the world needs to hear. And he just went on like this. And I'm like, I was just like, what do you do? He said, I don't know what we can do. We've created a situation in which controversy over non-essential issues is normalized because we have an evangelistic system that baptizes people on the premise of argument. So if you baptize people on the premise that, hey, we're right, y'all are wrong, and we're going to prove some things to you. Oh my goodness, you're right. The Bible does say that. Baptize me. And you baptize people on that premise continually enough, and then you say, well, we need an elder. How about you? And we compose a church board, right? And now you have a situation where the system produces a certain, this isn't the best language, but another word isn't coming to mind. We've normalized a system that creates a certain quality of convert. So in male-female dynamics, right, we say, become the kind of person you want to attract. Right? If you want to get married, you're like attracts like. Okay, denominationally, we're attracting what we are. We're attracting what we are. So, and then we do church together based on. So it's inevitable that you're going to baptize people who are intellectually wired for being right about something that everybody else is wrong about, right? The moment you normalize that as a way of processing information, now you don't hear me saying, I hope, that nothing's right. I mean, I believe Jesus is right. I believe that Jesus is beautiful. I believe in the death, burial, and resurrection and ascension of Christ to the right hand of the Father. I believe those are all actual historical verities, okay? I'm not saying that nothing's true. I'm simply saying that if the method, if the approach to people's minds is one in which conversion to our thing is based on being right about things that other people are wrong about, it shouldn't be a surprise to us that once we compose a whole congregation of these people, that they're going to be asking, well, what's your position on the nature of Christ? And then there's going to be internal controversy, right, over any number of things that we think are. So this is our situation as a people. In our current state, Adventism offers no mind-blowing attraction to the world's 8 billion people. Let's just be honest. We're not saying anything that rocks anybody's world. Nobody, we're not corporately. Now, I'm not saying that any one individual sitting here isn't, I'm speaking in generalities here corporately. We're not like on the map of world consciousness. People aren't leaning in saying, whoa, that's interesting. Even in the world of theology, we're just sidelined as irrelevant to the discussions on the very subjects that we're actually interested in, okay? So how did we get here? This is the question I want to explore with us, and this is going to be very challenging because we have to go through all this history. So some of this will be fast, some of it will slow down for. We trace our origins as a people to 1844. This is kind of a Moses thing we're doing, right? Remember Moses in Deuteronomy gathered the children of Israel together before they were about to go into the promised land. He said, hey, let me rehearse for you our history. We were slaves in Egypt. We came out. We were formed as a people, right? There's the necessity of the historical perspective. Just like you are the sum total of all the experiences you've ever had in your history as an individual, we corporately are the sum total of all of our corporate experiences. Nothing ever happens in a vacuum. Everything is connected to everything else. And I think that history is very important, and I'll try to make this as least boring as possible, but we are the leaders, so we need to face reality. We trace our origins as a people to 1844. Daniel and Revelation, at a glance, in a nutshell, is something like this. Daniel and Revelation, Adventism, all these young people, mostly teenagers and young adults. The old guy was Joseph Bates. He was like in his 40s, and he was the old guy. And they were all studying Scripture, specifically Daniel and Revelation. And what they discovered is, this is the historicist view of Daniel and Revelation, not the futurist view or the preterist view, but this is the historicist view of Daniel and Revelation, which is the official view held by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Daniel and Revelation essentially paint this picture. History will be characterized by the reign of bad religion in which the character of God is horribly defamed by doctrines that uglify the character of God. Doctrines like penance and, eternal torment and purgatory, all of which have something in common. The entire doctrinal edifice of what I'm calling here bad religion is essentially one thing. There are really only two religions in the world. It looks like there are hundreds or thousands of religions. There aren't. There's two. Salvation by works and the grace of God in Christ. And the salvation by works paradigm has many different ways of manifesting. There's long list legalism and short list legalism. There's salvation by many requirements and salvation by a few requirements. But whether it's liberal legalism or conservative legalism, it's all the same thing. It's what Ellen White described as, she said that really what's going on in the world is that a single idea, Ellen White says, lay at the foundation of all what she calls the heathen religions of the world. Don't be offended by her use of that word. She wrote this 100 and some years ago. But all of them have something in common, she says, that the human agent can do something to make God better than he is. That the human agent can earn God's love. And she flips it and says, you can't earn God's love because you already have it. This is one of her key contributions that we have not spent a lot of time incorporating into our thinking. But essentially, Ellen White's perspective is that there's nothing you can do to earn God's favor simply and profoundly because you already have it. That there is something that was achieved in the person of Christ that was universal, and that God's posture toward humanity is a positive posture. And there's nothing you can do to make God love you more than he already does because he already loves you with all of his love. And everything is response. None of it's ever meritorious, okay? So bad religion is all about putting the onus on the human agent. This is one religion in many configurations. And then there's what's called the gospel of Christ, which is the single alternative to everything else the world has to offer. So we have in Daniel and Revelation the reign of bad religion. And then Daniel and Revelation describe that this is psychologically unsustainable. So you have the reaction of modern atheism. Modern atheism emerged from the French Revolution, not from Darwin's On the Origin of Species. That book was published in 1844, right? The atheism, modern atheism was born before the theory of evolution was developed as a reaction against bad religion. Most atheism is protest atheism. Most of it has nothing to do with, biology. Even Richard Dawkins, who's written the most famous book in modern times, The God Delusion, and he's an evolutionary biologist himself by vocation. And the book has very little, if anything, to do. It mentions evolution, but it's a tirade against bad religion. In one interview, Dawkins actually said, well, if you guys would make God look better, I might believe in him. This is a vulnerable moment for an atheist. Most atheism is not a person thinking through, the biological development of life. Most atheism is a violent emotional reaction against a picture of God that is not emotionally attractive. And this is foretold in Daniel and Revelation. And then, according to the trajectory of Daniel and Revelation, the reign of bad religion, just look at Europe with all the cathedrals, beautiful architecture. This was the cradle of Western civilization and Western Christianity, and those churches are empty. They're museums or something, but everybody left the thing that had dominance because it was unsustainable, because we're free moral agents. There was no zimzum. There was no space. There was no room for voluntary action. So then Daniel and Revelation say, okay, so bad religion will generate unbelief, and then there will be the rise of a theological revolution. And this is where Daniel and Revelation are describing things like in Daniel, it uses this kind of language, that a people will do great exploits. They will do great and mighty things in the world that will draw people's attention. Revelation describes it like this. Revelation says, the earth will be illuminated with the glory of God through this revolutionary movement. This is a theological revolution, which is to say, not an academic revolution so much as a revolution of perspective on the character of God, where God's character will be rescued from the ugly portrayals of God that have generated unbelief. And we, as a people, have the opportunity to be a part of that revolution. I say to be a part of it, it would be audacious for us to say we're it. There are people who are saying things that are it, and there are some of our people who are saying things that are that revolution. But the revolution will be televised. And it's not going to all only be Seventh-day Adventists saying things. It's going to be all kinds of people having a great dawning in their minds regarding the beauty of God's character. Now, we have the raw theological materials, I believe, to construct the most beautiful picture of the character of God the world has ever seen, short of Christ and the apostles. We have the raw theological materials from which to paint a picture that the world needs to see. Now, what we've done, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit now, is we have taken those raw theological materials and we've reduced those materials to a series of arguments, and we have created a very unattractive environment. Adventism is possessed of a latent potential, I'm going to suggest. A latent potential. It's there, it's a latent potential. That was 1844, that potential was set. By 1852, the young Ellen White made her first statement of rebuke to that movement, and she said that this people with this latent potential to paint a picture of the character of God, this was the first time in 1852 that she said, hey, the description of the church of Laodicea, that's describing us. We're theologically arrogant, rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing. That's describing a sense of theological arrogance. We have the truth. We're rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, but the diagnosis from the faithful and true witness, Ellen White goes on to say, well, but Jesus says that we are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. And then the remedy is described, and the remedy is that you need to be clothed with white raiment. You need the doctrine of justification by faith. You need the gospel. You're factually correct on some doctrines, and you're spiritually lost with regards to the gospel. So 1852 is the first time that Ellen White, she was very young at this point, and she just said, listen, we're going in the wrong direction. I'm warning y'all. Okay, then in 1863, we became an official denomination. We were incorporated as a, I don't know if they had 501c3 nonprofit corporations back then, whatever it was, whatever the thing was where you become a denomination, presto changeo, we became a denomination in 1863, right? Then in 1876, we're covering ground here, we began to do public evangelism and portray our public evangelism in a graphic. This is before you had Keynote and PowerPoint, and so every pastor, every Adventist pastor was given this picture. You were given a large one of them, and you put it on the easel, and you had a long pointy stick, and you would preach by pointing to all the parts. It's a composite. It's a mosaic of elements, right? This is called The Way of Life, and it was commissioned in 1876 by James White, Ellen's husband. You'll notice that the Ten Commandments are hanging from the tree of life. Colossal theological mistake, but there they are, hanging from the tree of life. And you got Jesus on the cross, kind of, off to the side and receding a little bit, but, he is there, right? So this is the picture, right? That was commissioned in 1876. In 1881, James White begins to die, but before he dies, he says, I feel assured, he's writing this to Ellen at first, and then it was published in the Adventist Review. I feel assured that there is a crisis before us. He doesn't mean a financial crisis, or he means a theological crisis. He's realizing that what he himself had done was misguided. And he says there's a crisis before us as a people. We should preserve our physical and mental powers, me and Ellen. He knows he's sick, he's dying, he's not doing well physically. We should preserve our physical and mental powers for future service. So here's the crisis. He describes it. The glorious subject of redemption, the gospel, should long ago have been more fully presented to the people. We have not been preaching the gospel. He's confessing. He's in a vulnerable moment here, and he's realizing, hey, wait a minute, we've been pointing our people in a direction that we need to rectify. We need a course correction, okay? And then he dies. After he dies, the obituary was published in the Adventist Review, and in that obituary, here's what the author wrote. By the way, for those of you who are interested, it was Ballinger who wrote this. For those of you for whom that means anything.
Okay. The video is very long, so I am not able to play everything right here on this channel. But if you are interested in watching the full video, I have placed the link in the description for you. You can go check it out and watch the full video for yourself. Now, here is my view. I don't know what your views are, but you can put your views in the comments. But here is my view. I do not agree 100% with everything that was said by Ty Gibson in the video. Let me say that again. I do not agree 100% with everything that was said by Ty Gibson in the video. Let me give more details, all right? Let me give more details. Now, I agree that attendance in the SDA church is low. I mean, Sabbath attendance. However, I do not think that this is only the problem of the SDA church. There are other major denominations, Christian denominations, that are facing the same problem. General attendance in various Christian churches are low. Yes, are low. And friends, I'm not making this up. You can do your own research and you're going to find out that attendance is actually low, especially in first world countries. So the question is, should we be so much surprised about low attendance in the SDA church? My answer is no. Why? Because low attendance that is going on not only in the SDA church but also in some major Christian churches are also part of the end time events. You know, in this end time, people are going to be disinterested in spiritual activities, and it is so obvious. 1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 1, the Bible says that in the last days, and I want to quote verbatim, it says, the Spirit speaks expressly that in the last days some shall depart from the faith. So when we see low attendance, when we see people not coming to church any longer, friends, they are all part of the end time events. Yes. And if we are seeing low attendance in churches, especially in the SDA church, doesn't mean that the church should sit idle and watch what is going on. The answer is no. We need to keep encouraging people to attend church. We need to keep encouraging them to participate in spiritual activities. So that is it. And the second thing that I do not agree with what was said in the video is that he suggested that the SDA church does not have the truth. That is what he suggested. But I do not agree. I don't agree with that statement. The SDA church has the truth. God has given his church whatever truth that it needs. All right. So I think the problem is how we handle the truth God has given us. I think that is where the problem is, but not that we have no truth. We have the truth. We have the truth, friends. But sometimes how we handle the truth becomes a problem. All right. A problem not only to the members of the church, but also to people outside of the church. So generally, I do agree, as I said, I agree with some of the statements that were made in the video because they are true statements. They are the fact. They are what is happening in our churches. Yes, that is so true. But as I said, I do not agree with all of what was said in the video. There are some I don't agree, and I've shared with you what I did not agree in the video. I also hope that you have a lot to share concerning the video that I played coming from Ty Gibson. You have a lot of things to share. You can put your ideas or your thoughts in the comments of this video, friends. So this is all I had to share with you concerning what is taking place within the SDA church. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and may God bless.